What is going on, GBA? I am the Confusion, and we are back today to bring you guys the weekly recap for week 6 of the GBA. But as I'm sure you all know, I am not alone. I am here with my great co-host, Ospastic.
Hello, one and all. You are never alone, Confusion. I am always with you.
I love knowing that.
Nope, just kidding. Let's go. We are good to go week 6.
Yeah, we got a good load of battles. So heading into the first one, we have the Pitsburgh Piratas up against the Free State Torcats. Tup is bringing his Nidoking, the Steelix, the Blissey, Hitmontop, Staraptor, and the Chandelure. And Duncan is bringing his Alolan Ninetales, Alolan Marowak, then his Landorus, Keldeo, Weavile, and Mandibuzz. Now, this first game, as you can see, is going to come down to the timer. It is a 1v1, and the team that did end up having the more HP, which is how you decide who wins these kind of ties, was Duncan. So, although you can't see it, he is the one who is technically going to get the win of the game, because on his side of the battle, his Pokemon ended up having more HP, because at the end of the game, it came down to Mandibuzz versus Chandelure, but we'll get into that as we head through the match. Now, in the beginning, we have, when you look at the team matchup, we have Tup, who's bringing quite a bulky team, with Pokemon like Blissey, the Steelix. He has Nidoking with the Shuka Berry, he has Hitmontop and Intimidate Mon, and quite a bulky Chandelure too. That's not quite offensive. It was running a Will-O-Wisp Hex set with Energy Ball and Sub, so a lot of bulk on that side. And then we have a lot of offense on Duncan's side. Mon's like Alolan Ninetales, the Alolan Marowak, a Double Dance Landorus, a Carmine Keldeo, his Weavile, really his only wall being the Mandibuzz. So that's why I feel like Duncan's Mons went down so quickly. They came in, did a lot of damage, and then, quickly died. Some quick instances of that is Keldeo. Once Keldeo came in on the Steelix, although it was toxic, which quickly put that thing on the timer, it was able to pressure down the Blissey, really the only Mon that could take Skulls at that point, and then beat it with a Secret Sword, because that move does hit on the physical side, and Blissey is quite frail there. So Blissey was unfortunately had to go down. Tup had to sack that thing. He didn't have great switch-ins, but once that ended up happening, he was able to bring in his Scarf Staraptor and just click Brave Bird. There was really no good Brave Bird switch-ins on Duncan's side, so what he did was he just let that Keldeo go, sent in the Weavile, and clicked Ice Shard. Now, Tup was smart. He actually put enough defensive EVs onto that Staraptor in order for it to live in Ice Shard after the recoil, so it was able to live that Ice Shard and take out the Weavile. Now, we'll see later in the match that losing his one Scarfer, losing his speed, is going to really cost him. So, he did have a safe switch into the Weavile with Steelix, so you could say that's what he should have done in that instance, but regardless, the Staraptor was able to get rid of a really big threat in Weavile, but because of the Ice Shard damage and the recoil from 2 Brave Birds, Staraptor does go down, so a lot of Pokemon really going down very quickly. After that, Alolan Ninetales is going to come in, set up an Aurora Veil, and die to the Steelix, in order so that the Landorus can end up coming in, set up a Swords Dance, set up a Rock Polish, and do a lot of damage. It is able to get rid of the Steelix, taking its heavy slams quite easily because of the Aurora Veil. Same with the Hitmontop. That thing is able to click Sucker Punch, and he is able to do a lot of damage to that thing. So right after that, he is actually bringing a Fly set, so he actually was able to get rid of the Hitmontop even after the Intimidate, but because the Nidoking was running a Shuka Berry, it was able to take the Earthquake and kill it with the Ice Beam. So a lot of 1v1s, I kill you, you kill me, sort of instances when we see this battle go down. What ends up happening in the end is interesting. Mandibuzz vs Chandelure is the last Mons. We do have Alolan Marowak still in the back, so it's 2v1 at that point. But because the Chandelure is so bulky, Will-O-Wisps, the Mandibuzz, has a substitute, Foul Play cannot break it, Duncan is in that instance forced to timer stall him down. Now the controversy does come in whether he should have just played it regular timer, or what he ended up doing, which is actually stall out the timer so that, he plays that safe. Now that was his win condition, so that's what he did. But regardless, a good game, 1v1 like I said in the beginning, but the game did end up going to Duncan. But after that, what are you thinking, Spastic?
the momentum and the pacing of the game definitely changed from the beginning towards the end. It was blisteringly fast, mods taking each other out left and right, and then towards the end, it was slower, more methodical. Yeah, taking it down to the timer, a lot of people aren't going to be happy with that, but we've seen a lot of timer stall this season, and I've said it before, I've said it again. It is a viable strategy. It's not the greatest strategy, but if a coach can see that it is his win con, then he's going to take it, by all means. So it may not be the most popular one. You know, it did end up being a one-to-one tie as far as differential goes. But a match that wasn't so much of a close match, it ended up being a 5-0, was the San Jose Sharpedos versus the New Orleans Pelipers. Tom bringing Celesteela, Thunder's Therian, Nidoqueen, Porygon 2, Azelf, and Zygarde Dog. John bringing Infernape, Melodic, Porygon Z, Uxie, Goodra, and Jolteon. Now right at the beginning, you see Porygon 2 and Porygon Z facing off, as well as Uxie and Azelf. And turn 1, Uxie and Azelf are both sent out at first, both of them opting to go for U-turn. John getting a better end of the deal, Uxie slower, so it gets more momentum in his favor. Now, Tom quickly sets up Toxic Spikes with Nidoqueen, which ultimately would have been a great game changer for him, in his favor if John's entire team was poisoned. But with Uxie levitating and two of his Mons being set up to benefit from Toxic Spikes, Jolteon and Milotic running the Marvel Scale, which allowed its defenses to go through the roof, especially with John's the EV spread that he had for it, and Jolteon running Quick Feet to ensure that it just outpaced everything on Tom's team. Now, it may have seemed bad at first, but ultimately it was a big blessing for John. Now, Infernape burning its Z move on the Nidoqueen, it looked stylish, it looked cool, but ultimately not really helpful. Even John admitted that. But it's always nice to see an all-out pummeling go off. But later on, we see Jolteon staying in when Tom switching into a Thunderous Therian. Normally, a Volt Switch or a Thunderbolt would help Volt Absorb, but he predicts, goes for the HP Ice, gets a lot of damage off. Again, that Toxic Spikes really coming in handy for him. Milotic sitting there soaking hits all day, taking the hits, recovering, taking the hits, recovering, firing off Scalds, back. Jolteon and Porygon Z coming in to finish off the rest of Tom's team. Jolteon racking up a nice 4 kills, putting it up even higher in the kill leader. I think it was a great match by John. He really prepped his team well, and Tom really prepped his team well, but ultimately John just utilized more things to his advantage.
Yeah, I mean, he played with the Jolteon really, really well. Obviously, the Toxic Spikes was so unfortunate because, although, like you said, it seemed like it would help him poisoning the team, but once that Milotic had its Marvel skill up, it had so much bulk in its defense, Tom just had way too much trouble, kind of beating through that. I thought the substitutes on the bulky Mons, such as the Porygon 2 and Milotic, were really interesting sets. They looked like they could have been very effective, but because Milotic and Porygon were good pivots against each other, having a substitute was very annoying. Porygon was unfortunately poisoned before it was able to set up a substitute, so that obviously crucially affected its longevity in the game. So really just putting Tom on the backhand, but I still think they both played a really, really good match. So moving on to the next game, we actually have the Barouche Donphan up against the St. Louis Rampardos. Now, the Barouche Donphan and Lars bring Magearna, Donphan, Rotom Heat, Lucario, Crawdaunt, and Latias, while Dan, A-Drive bringing Clefable, Delmise, Terrakion, Victini, Haxorus, and the Scizor. Now, right out of the gate, we have the Clefable and the Magearna and the prediction game. This is really a prediction game because the Magearna does end up getting paralyzed, but what ends up happening is, para-hacks, which is super unfortunate on Lara's side, but a little bit of mispredicting as Dan does keep the Clefable in, and later on he is able to get a lot of Moonblasts on that thing, even getting a special attack drop at one point, being able to live the Flash Cannon and Moonlight up. So Very interesting to see how the Magirna struggles a lot. I believe it was a Trick Room set, so it actually could have done a little bit better because it had coverage for Dan's entire team, rocking out with the Flash Cannon, Shadow Ball, and Hidden Power Fire. Speaking of that Shadow Ball, Victini does switch in, and Dan predicts it to be a very comfortable switch into the Magirna. Magirna and Lars predicts that, goes for the Shadow Ball, and does huge damage, and that really affects the Victini because of potential rocks on the Donphan. Could make that thing have almost no switch-ins left and could barely do anything, and Life Orb. So it was really crippled in that sense. The Latias being a fairly good switch-in, so Victini automatically kind of put on the backhand at that point. Donphan, I feel like Donphan was definitely the star of this game because of how much trouble Dan had breaking through it. Obviously, the Delmise had a pretty good switch into that thing. Knockoff did do a decent chunk once Lars predicted that the second time around, but the first time around it took an Earthquake quite comfortably and could just send off a Power Whip. The problem is the second time that Delmise does send out a Power Whip, it does miss, and that is so important. Lucky for Lars, I don't think that was his play, but regardless, it ends up working out for him because of the miss. But Donphan is so crucial because it could take an Irate from the Haxorus, can take a close combat from the Terrakion, it could take endless hits from the Scizor. It was really good and could do a lot of damage back, so risking that was really weird, but it ended up working out for him. The Power Up does miss, super unfortunate for Dan, and from there he has a lot of trouble breaking through that between the switches of the Rotom Heat and the Latias. So that was pretty much the game. Donphan was able to get a kill off on the Terrakion, does a lot of damage to the Haxorus. It really just put him on the back foot, and from there Lucario is able to just click Extreme Speed and take care of the rest of the match. So really quick game in that sense, but unfortunate hacks. I still think it was a pretty good game. I think what Lars did, making sure that he had the right switch-ins to the Victini, to things like the Terrakion still in place was good. Obviously, like I said, risking the Donphan was kind of weird in my opinion, but I know Lars did believe he could still win regardless. So I think it was a great game, but what do you think, Spastic, of this?
It was. I mean, you pretty much covered it all. Donphan putting in a lot of great work. Offensively, it's not often perceived as the premier offensive mon, but it's usually like a defensive rollout, with some good offensive presence, so it can take a couple of hits and then dish it back out. But here, Lars really utilized his mascot against Dan's team. Magirna and Clefable was an interesting matchup. I really felt that Magirna could have handled Clefable a lot better, but Dan played with it smartly. Victini being mostly useless in this, well, not really useless, but not as effective as it could be, really hurt because that's Dan's nuke, and it was unfortunate, but Lars really played well around it. And we're going to see a similar case in the next game with the Tampa Bay Luxrays versus the Philadelphia Scissors. Mono bringing Jirachi, Buzzwole, Mantine, Roserade, Zygarde 50, and Greninja, while Chimpact brings Thundurus Incarnate, Kyurem Black, Gligar, Alomomola, Cofagrigus, and Forretress. Oh my goodness, Chimp brought a bulky team. Barring Kyurem Black and Thundurus Incarnate, his team's really bulky. Mono brought pretty offensive team, but right off the bat, Mono sending out Roserade, Chimpact predicting it, getting off a nice Z fly, ending an entire family of Roserades. It was bad.
I love that line.
It was a great line. Thank you, Mono, for providing such a good commentary line. Later on, Greninja getting a nice prediction, predicting a Protect, setting off a layer of spikes instead of going for an attack like it would be expected to. So that was nice on Mono's part. It ended up, getting some nice chip damage off. Then he sends out Buzzwole against Gligar. Gligar, Swords Dance Gligar. Getting an OHKO on Buzzwole after living an Ice Punch. Aerial Acing it to Kingdom Come and back. Again, a surprise play. Yeah, SD Gligar, not a typical set in the least. But here it is, getting a key kill on Buzzwole, which otherwise would have done a lot of work against Chimpact's team. Missing the Toxic on Cofagrigus was unfortunate. It would have really cut down its longevity. Cofagrigus ultimately putting in a lot of utility defensive pressure, taking hits, taking Jirachi down with not really down, but taking away its Serene Grace ability at the end with Mummy, and preventing Manos' main win condition at that point. Serene Grace, Iron Heading everything. It was unfortunate. Fortress setting up spikes on Mono and then keeping spikes off of his side. Once Greninja had gone down, Fortress keeping them off really helped him in the long run. Alamomola, really, really annoying. Lots of defensive switches, taking hits, switching out, getting that regenerator, wish passing, and then Thunderous coming in. He came in at the beginning, did a lot, came in at the end, just cleaned house. It was a really nice play on Chimpact. It's unfortunate to see Amano's undefeated streak come to an end, but the way both coaches played, I can accept this. What about you?
I love this game. Of course, yeah, like you said, highlighting the fact that this is the end of Mono's win streak. He was not able to get halfway through the season without losing. But hey, he lost the Chimpact. I think that's quite an honorable loss because of how great Chimpact is. And let's give some props to Mono. He brought a very good team, very toxic-filled team. Like half his team had Toxic on it, which, I mean, you can't blame him when you see things like Alomomola and Cofagrigus. I mean, I don't blame you for bringing Toxic on so many Mons. But the same way Donphan was the center of last games with Lars, I think Zygarde was the center of this game. Depends how Mono played that Zygarde and the way Chimpact reacted to it, that in my opinion would really decide where that game ended up going. Once that thing lost its leftovers, that was really big. It switched in on the Thunderous, but that Thunderous just went for the knockoff. Chimp just playing to get that knockoff on. And it did end up getting rid of Zygarde's leftovers. So the Dragon Dance sub Toxic set with 1,000 arrows, of course, was not as effective because you couldn't set subs up on too many mons like the Alomomola, because losing all that HP is very, very scary. Setting up a Dragon Dance late game could have meant something, but of course, like Cofagrigus did have HP Icy. I mean, Chimpact really did, as you saw through his team prep and the battle, prepared heavily for any Zygarde set. But I still think it was probably Mono's best Zygarde set to bring in that case. But I think losing the leftovers was very detrimental to keeping that thing alive and making sure it could get in enough times. Obviously, Mantine not doing too much because of just they couldn't really switch in on too much, and when it did switch in towards the end, it was killed by the Thunderous. So regardless, I think it was a really good game to watch. I mean, like you said, the Fly, the Z-Fly, just seeing both sides of the prep and the way they played around it. Although Chimp had such a defensive team, he did bring enough offense to make sure that things like Buzzwole and the Roserade and the Greninja were checked. So great game on both ends. So moving on to the next game, we have the Utah Jasmine up against the San Diego Chimp Chargers. And Necrostevo brings Hippowdon, Klefki, Breloom, Swallow, Cloyster, and the Lantern. And MV brings his Kingdra, Empoleon, Alakazam, Dragonite, Alolan Muck, and the Virizion. Noticing now that this is the first time MV is bringing his Dragonite with the Z move. I don't think it's actually his first time bringing it, but I think it's going to be his first time using it in the Wi-Fi. And Kingdra coming without the rain, and actually a Sniper set. So immediately that Sniper set comes through as it is able to set up a Focus Energy on the Hippowdon as Necrostevo sends in his Klefki, thinking it could take at least some hits. It kind of has to. It's his Dragon Check. But once that thing set up a Focus Energy, it took around 75 to 80% from that Scald and got a really crucial burn, making it so that the Play Rough did not do as much damage alongside the Sandstorm and was able to take out the Klefki. And that's important because without the Klefki, Dragonite can easily spam his Outrage, and that's very problematic, as we'll see for Necrostevo. After that, his Swallow is able to come in and do a lot of damage to the Empoleon. Obviously, Empoleon not taking too much damage from the Brave Bird, as it is a Steel type, could take Boom Burst, Brave Birds, whichever it really wants to go for. After that, we do see the Lantern come in, some rocks go up, we have Breloom coming in, and Alakazam taking care of that really quick, because the Breloom just comes in, clicks Mach Punch, gets KO'd by like Alakazam's Psychic. Like, Mons go down left and right, kind of like the first game we saw. So right after that, the Swallow comes in, quick attacks the Alakazam, and that thing goes down. Then the Dragonite comes in with a multi-scale up. Swallow is not going to be doing too much to that thing, so Necrosievo does make a pretty safe play and goes into the Hippowdon. Make sure that Sandstorm does get rid of the multi-scale, which is really good, and make sure it can take a few hits, doesn't let it Dragon Dance too much up, and get a Toxic and start slacking off, I think is what he was going for. But MV, of course, being the heat that he always brings, was able to set up a Dragon Dance, and in this trick house we have a Z Outrage, and was just able to knock out Oko, a Hippowdon. Of course, it is not fully physically defensive, but that is still so impressive, clearly showing you what the Z moves can do in this meta. After that, Lantern comes in. I think the thought process on Necrosievo was it could have been a Z Draco. That's also the good thing about Z moves. You don't know which move you're going for. It doesn't say Z Outrage, just says Devastating Drake. So he was thinking his Assault Vest Lantern could take a Draco, but unfortunately it was Outrage, and from there his Lantern has to go down, as well as the Cloyster. Ice-Shard did not do enough, even though it was a Choice Scarf set. Dragonite did have a Dragon Dance up, so yeah, Outrage doing a lot of damage. Right afterwards, though, the Swallow is able to come in. I thought it was able to clean up, but no, again we have Trick House Envy bringing a Mach so defensive it could take a Facade after Spike. Watching his team builder, I'm like, oh, that's never gonna happen. Why are you gonna have to, switch in on a Spike, then take a Facade? Why would it be the end? You need that to happen. No, that happened. Living that Facade from the Swallow allowed it to KO the Swallow, and without that, Swallow really did sweep. It could Brave Bird or the Virizion and Facade the Kingdra. In Envy's defense, if it could not live the Facade with the Muck, I'm pretty sure Swallow would have died to the Brave Bird damage if he brought in the Virizion first instead of the Kingdra, which is something interesting to note. But a really quick game, but in my opinion, a really impressive game on Envy's side. And although Necrosievo did lose, I think he knew what his win conditions were. It was the Swallow. He played appropriately, making sure he took out the Sash on the Alakazam if it had it. So I still give him props. He still played a really good game, but Envy was just basically able to outplay him in that sense. But a great game. What do you think of it, Spastic?
Hippowdon coming in, setting up Sand, getting that key chip damage off. It was nice knowing Necro knew it. I want to say Dragonite with the Z move. This week we saw two of the best uses of Z moves. The Z Thundurus and the Z Dragonite. Z moves are really powerful if they're used properly, and these two matches, we see them used in great effect. Especially the Dragonite coming in and OHKOing Hippowdon with that Z Outrage. Especially after the Dragon Dance. Now, this match was over pretty quick, but the next match took a very long time to watch. The Florida State Gators versus the San Francisco Arcaniners. George bringing Togekiss, Mew, Drapion, Mismagius, Serperior, and Suicune, while Gator brings Heatran, Galvantula, Heracross, Pyukumuku, Latios, and Mamoswine. Now I want to say this was a very methodical game, very slow. Gator is a very defensive coach, but that Togekiss staying in on Heatran and hitting it with a Aura Sphere, taking out a lot of health from it. It's Gator bringing in Latios to try and deal with it. Togekiss switching in on Draco Meteor several times, especially in the beginning. George on top of his prediction game, keeping that Latios from firing off devastating Draco Meteors. Superior with Leaf Storm, staying in on Heatran instead of switching out and playing it safe. Getting a Leaf Storm, getting a +2 contrary special attack boost, KOing it with Hidden Power, and then you think this is where Superior comes in and has a field day with Gator's team. Not so much. But the Toxic on Pyukumuku that really hurt its longevity because Pyukumuku has been one of Gators' best defensive mons, taking a lot of hits, recovering, getting slow baton passes, which it does in this game, but the toxic early on in its lifespan in this game really hurt. It couldn't stay out as long as Gator usually wants it to. Couldn't take as many hits. He had to keep recovering, keep switching it out. So the rest of his mons took more damage. But Hex Mismagius versus the Poison Pyukumuku coming in, wrecking it, and then being a big threat to Gator's team until Mamoswine comes in, soaks up a lot of good hits, and then clears the way for Latios to come in and finish out the game strong, taking out the rest of Georgia's team. In the end, really long match. Both coaches played very defensively, very good, utilizing both of their utility, neutering key threats, utilizing their own key threats. It was a good game. Again, very long, but then again, both coaches playing very defensively.
Yeah, you said everything I was pretty much going to say. George, I think, played a good game, although he lost. I think he played the Superior very effectively. You don't usually see Superior too much in the format. It is really good, don't get me wrong, but usually in the tier draft, it's not worth the tier 1 or tier 2 spot it's in. So seeing it in the free draft, I think George is utilizing that mon really well. Very impressive to see how he's been using it. I thought when I was watching once I was watching on Gator's perspective, I think I saw his perspective first. I thought the Superior was really going to go ham. I didn't really know how Gator was going to come back from that, but he did. He brought a choice banded Heracross. In my opinion, a choice scarfed one with Megahorn obviously could have done a little better, but this was a set he brought. It still was very effective. It scared off the Suicune because of how offensive it was. The Specs Latios was really, really, really good. That was a lot of pressure. Being able to just Draco so many mons once the Togekiss was gone. He went for it anyway, even when the Togekiss was there, but eventually was able to take out the Drapion and do a lot of damage with Thunderbolt later on during this attacking the Suicune. So really, really well he played the choice mons. The Assault Vest Mamoswine doing really well, taking hits from Superior and the Mismagius, and with Ice Shard, just a very effective set. Both sides played really well. So moving on from that match, we have the Detroit Steel Wings up against the Alola Athletic. Crimson bringing his Crocodile, Cobalion, Tornadus, Serena, Slowbro, and Sylveon. And Callum bringing Snorlax, Tyranitar, Rotom-Wash, Sableye, Excadrill, and Crobat. A couple main things I, of course, want to mention is the way Callum played. I noticed as he was playing in the beginning, he did mention that the reason he didn't have a team builder up is because he didn't build the team too much. He had a lot of friends help him out there, and I really think that's what caused him to lose. Not fully, because Chase prepped amazingly for his team, but I think not building at least a little bit, being the top of your team building crew is really important. I hope he changes that. I hope he has some more input. I know he will, but I think that's what caused him to kind of be a little bit on the edge in that game. Regardless, Chase had a lot of offense on his team, a lot of pressure. Sylveon was able to take a lot of hits from the Rotom-Wash. Serena was able to take hits from the Rotom-Wash. The Excadrill was pretty much stopped by a good chunk of his team. Crocodile could come in on it, Slowbro could come in on it, but he did end up saving it because it could do a lot in the end. Crocodile had a really good matchup because it was able to set up rocks on the Crobat, intimidate that thing. Intimidate was a really great factor, and Crobat was not that offensive, very bulky, so clicking knockoff on that, clicking knockoff on things like the Sableye, doing a lot of damage is really big. Callum did forget, though, that the Serena did have Queenly Majesty, and Crocodile being a dark type cannot be affected by Prankster. So Sableye really being put on the edge. I was really surprised he even brought it, but knowing that he didn't know how nerfed Prankster was in this generation made me think, okay, I guess it's fine, but because his friends helped him, I'm not really sure why they didn't notice, but regardless, the Sableye could not even Toxic the Serena, which is really unfortunate, and could not even Will-O-Wisp the Crocodile, so those mons could easily come in on the Sableye and gain a lot of momentum. Obviously, the key point of this game is Cobalion coming in on the Snorlax. Now, the Snorlax, of course, Callum should have been scared of that. He didn't really want that thing going down so quickly because the Sylveon was still around. But because of that, he switches into his Tyranitar just to take the close combat. But as we know, Chase brings a Swords Dance Cobalion, and once that Crobat is gone, he can pretty much click close combat on the entirety of his team, obviously barring the Sableye, but that thing had been gone by then. So he does click Swords Dance, the Tyranitar goes down to the close combat, and now we have something really interesting. A Life Orb Jolly Excadrill. That's important. I ended up talking to Callum after his match and asking him what the set on the Excadrill was, and it was a Life Orb 252 Jolly set. Now, Chase brought a 60 defense Shukaberry Cobalion, and after the negative drop in defense after the close combat, maybe the Excadrill could have ended up killing it through the Shukaberry. It was actually really close, but because it was Jolly and not Adamant, whether he clicked Swords Dance or Earthquake did not matter. Cobalion lived the EQ and could have still clicked Close Combat and swept from there. So that's not too big, but bringing a Swords Dance Cobalion, just of course, Cobalion, as we know, has been the kill leader for some time, and seeing that it got 4 kills and no deaths makes me think that is not going to change. Chase snagging a 5-0 against Callum. It could have been closer, but hey, that's what happens. Chase played a really, really good game with his Mons. Really great pivot. Callum also played really, really well. Obviously, he was a little bit mad at himself, kicking himself for sacking the Crobat with the rocks in the Sandstorm. But I personally think that Callum still plays really, really well, even when, one, the team isn't very familiar to him, and two, when his matchup isn't that great, since Cobalion with close combat and its coverage really did a lot of work. But what did you think of Chase's, I think, 3rd sweep?
Can anyone stop this man's Cobalion? It seems like every time Chase gets wins, and they're sweep wins. We've seen 2 Cobalion sweeps, and we've seen a Crocodile sweep. But barring that, Chase is really good at playing the rest of his team so that his sweeping mons can come in. Like you said, Sylveon taking a lot of hits from the Rotom Wash, Serena stopping some good priority moves, Crocodile neutering Prankster from Sableye. So Chase really playing well with his team to ensure that the Cobalion could set up and could go. Now again, Excadrill not being Adamant may or may not have hurt. Cobalion still coming in and cleaning through the rest of Callum's team. Go Chase, really, really turning things around from Season 5. So the next match was a lot closer than a 5-0 sweep. This was the San Francisco Giants versus the Milwaukee Sawsbucks. Gym Leader Geo brought Amoonguss, Umbreon, Tapu Fini, Gengar, Salamence, and Arcanine, while Battler X brought Zoroark, Cresselia, Licky, Como-O, Swampert, and Xurkitree. Now at the very beginning, we see Battler X doing a lot of good prediction switches. Geo switched out because he knew he didn't have a good type matchup. Battler X countered by predicting he was going to switch and switched into his own counter. This went back and forth for a little bit until Salamence came in on Como-O. Normally you would expect it to switch out, but Battler X predicted it coming in and clanging scales O-coded, taking out Geo's Z Captain before it could fire off any sort of Z move. Unfortunate, but oh well. I wasn't even bringing a Z move this week, but he was actually bringing a Scarf Salamence. But Z Salamence is a big threat, and Battler X took it out easily, basically taking out any possibility that it could have been Z Crystal and done anything to his team. Now, Calm Mind Cresselia versus Curse Umbreon. Interesting setup, Cresselia running Moonblast and Umbreon with Payback. Crest being behind the sub really allowed it to keep setting up Calm Minds and just Calm Mind, until it got to +2. Umbreon setting up a Curse, took out a good chunk of its health until it went down to repeated Moonblasts, until Calm Mind Tapu Fini came in and out calm minded Cresselia, that crit Moonblast on the Cresselia, some people may say it didn't. I say that it really mattered. Because Crest at +2/+2, Tapu Fini at +1, it mattered. That crit hurt Cresselia a lot. There were a lot of crits this game. But again, Battler-X playing really well with Zoroark. Switching it, it's disguised as Swampert. Switching it in on Amoonguss came in, thought it was Zoroark, took a flamethrower to the face before revealing that yes, it is Zoroark. Oh crap. And then Amoonguss still didn't go down. Zoroark ended up going down anyway. That sucked. And then towards the end, we had Battler-X almost had this, but again, more crits. The crit, Ice Punch, and the freeze on the Amoonguss, that almost mattered. If the Amoonguss had stayed frozen, that would have changed everything. But no, it stayed frozen only one turn, and then right when it was in the red zone, it thawed out, went for a Giga Drain, got most of its health back, proceeded to just take out the Swampert, and then Xurkitree came in and could have finished out the game well with HP Fire, but the crit Extreme Speed from Arcanine earlier took its health down, not allowing it to take as many hits as it rightly could have, and ultimately Amoonguss winning the War of Attrition with Giga Drain, Xurkitree not able to keep up and deal enough damage. There were a lot of crits this game. Some of them mattered, some of them not so much, but there were a lot of crucial crits, yeah? What do you think?
Yeah, like you said, a lot of hacks in this battle. Very unfortunate, and I know we keep using that word, but it fits so perfectly. It's really unfortunate to see those things happen. Obviously, for the Giantes, that's great. Gio, obviously, getting the hacks on his side is favorable, and on Steve's side is not. The thing is, it's Gio versus Steve, two competitors who are at the bottom of their division, who are really underperforming as far as we've seen. So it's very frustrating to see that happen. But although Gio did get the win, like I said, he is still underperforming in his division. So it's nothing to really celebrate. It's good to get a win, but he really has to step it up. I think in terms of Gio, I think his weakness when it comes to the way he's been battling with this team is just in the sense that it just doesn't seem like his play style. It's too predictable for him. I'm not sure how comfortable he is with Tapu Fini. I think Steve also is using a lot of new Mons. He did pick up some older Mons like Licky Licky and Hariyama, but I still think he's struggling to find out how to use those. But regarding the game itself, again, a lot of hacks, but it did end up going to Gio, so congrats to him. But now looking at the whole conference breakdown, Ula Ula, Pony, Akala, Melee, all these divisions looking really hot. And although you might think that Mano Tui was leading our division, as he takes a loss, we have the San Diego Chimchargers and MV leading Season 7 of the GBA. Really, really impressive to see that. He is 5 wins, 1 loss. Chimpax has 5 wins and 1 loss, and now Mono has 5 wins and 1 loss. I just think it was so impressive for Mono, and people were keeping an eye on him because he hadn't lost yet. MV got his loss pretty early, and same with Chimp. But they only got 1 loss. People forget that. They only got 1 of them, and now Mono has 1 loss, and MV and Chimp are both ahead of him now. So that is really interesting to see, but still, Mono is still doing really, really well. On the Melee division, we see the Detroit Steel Wings and San Jose Sharpedos, both 3-3, but the Steel Wings having a much higher differential just because of those sweeps. And then we, of course, see people at the bottom. The Piratas have not yet won a game. They are at the bottom of the league, unfortunately, going 0-6. Dallas Starry's bold prediction officially wrong. He thought at least everyone would have 1 win and 1 loss by the midpoint of the GBA, and it has come to that point, and Tup has not yet secured a win. So really annoying to see that. I know Tup is such a good format player, but I'm sure we all know that, again, this team is not really working out too much for him. But I am hoping to see him at least get a couple more wins and show us what he can do with his team once he gets a bit more comfortable with it. But what do you think of the breakdown?
As far as the divisions go, it's really nice to see Chase and Tom doing well. Yeah, they're both 3-3. Tom not doing so hot last season of the GBA. Chase not doing so hot in Season 5. It's nice to see them both coming back with a vengeance. both doing really well. It's still It's still sad to see league format veterans at the bottom of their respective divisions, not doing so hot. But we're seeing the newcomers do well, the veterans not doing so well. But again, we're halfway through the season. We'll see what happens. Although as far as the kill leaders go, I don't think we'll see a change for a while now, with Cobalion sitting at 13-2 with a plus 11 differential. That second great sweep. And now we have Crocodile still sitting at number 2. It got an extra kill, so bumped it up a little bit higher, but that sweep earlier in the season really cementing its place. Volcanion still at number 3. We see Jolteon and Latios both rising through the ranks, both getting 3. Well, Latios got 4. Jolteon getting 4 kills in its game. Latios getting 3 kills. I'm sorry, my notes getting. Lando Infernape, Alolan Muck, and Hawlucha still sitting high up in the ranks. Swellow popping in at number 10. We're seeing some shifting around in 4 through 10, but 1 through 3, barring another sweep, we'll be hard pressed to see another Mon take that number 3, or God forbid, the number 1 slot.
Yeah, all the fighting types seem to have gone. We still have Infernape and Hawlucha up here, obviously Cobalion at the top, but recently, earlier on in the season, we saw like over half of our league leaders as fighting types, which of course being such an offensive typing you can't blame, but now seeing much different Mons like Jolteon, Latios, Landorus, even Alolan Muck still sitting up there doing a really, really good job keeping up with their kills. Although you may say, well, Muck's been here for a little bit, it's not, it still has to gain more kills every week in order to keep up and stay in its position. Same with the Cobalion and Crocodile, as those two Pokemon from the same team, the Detroit Steel Wings, might I mention, both sit at the top, very, very tippy top of the league leaders. They still need to gain more kills in order to remain there. So although this is how it looks like now, the end of the season might not look as similar as it does now. Pokemon can gain kills, lose kills. Volcanion still keeping up with its kills. Chip doing a really good job, even though it wasn't brought this game. Same with Cobalion. Although it wasn't brought every single match so far, it still averages around 2 kills every week. So really impressive. And yeah, I like seeing Swellow up here. Flying types also doing really well. Landorus, Swellow, and Hawlucha. But other than that, that has been the Week 6 midway point. We are halfway through, Spastic.
Still aboard the hype train.
Very, very exciting. So other than that, we hope you enjoy and catch us next week for Week 7 of Season 7 of the GBA as we catch you guys up with the matches that week. So we will see you guys on Wednesday next week. Later.
Aloha, everyone.